Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to Coaster Kings Radio. Of course, we had another week hiatus because we moved last week into our brand new home, which we are recording this podcast episode from in our little bar dining room area with our espresso martinis to stay awake and also have a good time.
A Dutch original, the espresso martini. If you've never had one, you should, because they're great.
They are great. And you can make them with like Kahlua or Bailey's, but I like them a little stronger and just more espresso based. So ours is just espresso vodka and a little bit of simple syrup. Anywho, today is a little bit of a different episode than we originally had planned. Originally we had planned a Disneyland Paris episode, separate from a time traveler versus Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland episode. And we decided, you know what, let's just combine it all. And so we combined that. We're also going to talk a little bit about some newsworthy stuff and the Golden Ticket Awards and whether or not we should be trusting those results. It sounds very dramatic. And of course, you find everything Coaster Kings on thecoasterkings.com. We've got lots of new articles live, including Hollow Scream Tampa, Not Scary Farm, Horrorland in Spain. I think it's close to Madrid, but I forgot the exact location of this event. Maybe close to Barcelona. Horrorland, yeah.
Is that like the full, like...
It's at like Special Scream Park, but they moved to a new location this year, and I forgot exactly what the new location is. But that's all on thecoasterkings.com. And of course, we also have a variety of our podcast episodes, Coaster Kings Radio, streaming on several platforms, Spotify.
Like up to 42 now, right?
Yeah, so this is episode 42, that's official. We, of course, have a couple of mini-sodes, maybe like a dozen or so.
Yeah.
And then we have several specials throughout the last 3 seasons. We are nearing the end of season 3. Which is ending next week. So this is the one to last episode, and we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back with a lengthy season full of specials, award shows, and the 26 minisodes. So we're gonna go hard for season 4, but in order to do that, we have to take a little break.
Yeah.
Today let's start our conversation with Desperado. Desperado, one of our favorite aero hypers, favorite aeros, period.
One of our favorite aeros, one of our favorite hypers.
Is currently
one
testing.
One of our favorite coasters in the Southwest.
Word on the street has it that another investor, and it happens all the time in Primm, Nevada, has purchased the resort cluster that includes Whiskey Pete's, Buffalo Bills. What's the third one called? Whiskey Pete's, Buffalo Bills.
I think it's just called Primm Resort, like the third one.
Okay.
One of the hotels is Primm.
I thought the whole collection was called Primm Resorts.
I know, it's confusing.
Anyhow, looks like there may be a new investor, and they are currently running Desperado.
Shout out
no longer
to,
being on the website.
Thrill Rides Medley. On Instagram, Mr. Brendan.
He drove through the desert and saw it running and stopped and took some pictures, and now the whole world has proved that we may see a return of Desperado, which, for the record, I think is better than Magnum.
Yeah.
But, most people just can't have that conversation.
Desperado's 5 years newer than Magnum. I think it's reasonable to think that, like, 5 years of design prowess collecting over time. Like, I think Magnum was a pretty safe choice, and it was certainly a good formula, but Desperado definitely represents a less formulaic school of ride design. But yeah, go follow Thrill Rides Medley on Instagram, all one word, and check out his amazing photography of Desperado testing, as well as several other coasters throughout the Southwest. His photography is awesome, so go check him out. But yeah, with Desperado testing, first of all, totally shook. I really thought COVID was going to kill this thing, because, like, the Primm Valley resorts don't do well on their best day. Like, the Primm Valley resorts they're
a little deserted,
struggling even when Vegas is thriving. So
must admit, I've just been lucky that I've been on Desperados many times and a half. Because I think I've made like 4 or 5 separate trips to ride it, and then I just marathoned it.
Yeah.
You and I alone have done 3 trips to ride it.
Yep.
3 separate trips.
That was the week we met. Like,
that was the first trip.
One of the first things we ever did.
I did a stakeout in the parking lot to make sure it was running.
Yeah,
and picture up in Vegas.
Because I was flying in for work,
and I drove from LA.
You drove from LA, and I was like, "Can we see? Like, do you know if Desperado's gonna be open? Like, before you come get me, before we go over there?" And so you parked. Yeah,
and I'd already ridden it that summer in July with our friend Ryan, and we rode it a bunch. And then we went back in the winter in like January we rode it, and we went back in July we rode it. So we've been quite a bit. So once we lived in LA, we kind of like couldn't not stop there on the way to Vegas. or even just made a point of going there for the day and coming back because it's such a good hyper
We got
coaster.
really lucky. On the second visit, we bought those shirts, like the ride
No,
operator.
that was the third visit.
Was that? Are you sure?
Yeah, the
I thought
second visit we took the monorail. It was the winter, remember?
Okay.
It was cold and we drove to Phoenix.
I thought
after.
maybe wasn't there a trip where we wore the shirts there? After
Yeah,
we'd
well,
already purchased them.
We bought them and then we wore them
And then
the
we
same
wore
day.
them the same
We
day.
put them on in the parking lot, took a selfie, and left.
Okay.
But that was in July.
All right.
Yeah. So
It was
yeah,
great because the ride operators were wearing these amazing shirts, and we were like, "Those shirts are awesome." They're like, "Oh, they're actually for sale. We're just now wearing them because we have them and they're cool." So we bought them.
so now we have a unique T-shirt
Yeah.
in our collection,
Yeah.
which is a Desperado T-shirt. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're excited that it has a potential future again.
Yeah.
We will definitely plan a trip literally just to Vegas just to go ride that again. Because we love that ride that much.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's in our near future.
I just don't know. Like, I guess, like, I don't know how this is happening. I don't know how the ride is actually functioning at this point because it is just so uncanny. It's a magnificent ride. It's like this beautiful mirage out in the desert, out in this deserted place that is supposed to be. It's meant to be an oasis.
It's funny because back in the day when the coast opened, there wasn't even an actual city yet. It was just called State Line, Nevada,
Yeah.
and then Primm became
literally
the city after the
unincorporated.
resort
Yeah.
already opened, so
Yeah.
people could live there and work
Yeah.
there. But it's still like a good 40 minutes from Vegas, so it's kind of like in a really weird position.
I appreciate what they were trying to do with it because they were like, oh, for the people driving into Nevada, like, obviously we should put something right across the border because we can, and that makes us like we're closer to California.
But it's also one of those things is like, well, people have already driven 3 hours through the desert to even
Yeah.
get there. So at this point, they're only 40 minutes from Vegas. Why the hell would they stop there if they're that close to
It
Vegas?
was well intended, but it was a misfire. I think back in its day, like when it opened, it was pretty substantial. But then when you look at it and compare it to what Vegas looks like now, it just is like the poor Primm is just like stuck in a time warp, and I just don't know if they'll ever achieve sustainability.
It's funny though, because they've got some pretty major outlets there that I have seen pretty busy. But I've also been to the outlets before that was so clearly dead that I thought it was like an abandoned Chinese mall. So there's like no in between.
I think
when
one
it
of the
comes to
biggest
Primm.
things working against them is that when people go to Vegas from like by aircraft, like when they fly to Vegas, they don't need a car. Nobody rents a car in Vegas. And for the Primm resorts, unless you already are driving a car in, which
I still think that at least half, if not more, of the people going to Vegas
Drive there?
drive in from like LA, San Diego. I mean, San Diego has a road straight to Vegas too. Like it's not
You
that
think so?
bad. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've seen them. You've seen the freeway. The freeway will literally be completely packed from Vegas to LA or LA to Vegas, depending on the holiday.
The airport is enormous and does hundreds of flights a day. I don't know. Anyways, I just still think like
And especially back then, there weren't that many flights.
there was
between, like, the
probably
West
an
Coast.
expectation that they would be able to attract more people who were there in Vegas by way of aircraft versus people who were in Vegas by car.
There's still that one other resort between Primm and Vegas. That big hotel with the same flashy lights. What's it called again? You remember?
I think I know.
There's
which
like
you're
one
talking
more
about.
hotel that's kind of like a mini Primm. Like just
There's
one
some
hotel
stuff
with
that's like kind of at the doorstep of Vegas, like that Gold
no,
Nugget.
no. I'm talking about like the one that's right in between.
I think I
Primm.
know which one you're talking about. There's a gas station there that we
Yeah,
saw
like
that.
a gas station, and then there's like a Denny's
Like one
obviously in
whole
the
gas
parking lot.
station, yeah.
Really weird. Anyway, let's not
Anyways,
linger on that too much. We're really excited, and
we're just
hopefully it opens
curious.
again.
Any news on the subject is exciting. We're just amazed, like we're mystified that it's testing, and we can't wait to hear more. The ride, of course, it's not open till it's open, so we shouldn't, put our eggs in that basket just yet. We don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, don't buy flight tickets yet.
Don't,
But,
don't go there yet. But
Stay on the lookout.
the trains look great in those pictures on Instagram. It's like the original poster. Brendan was like, I don't know if they just take really, really good care of these trains, or if they've been refurbished, but they look good as new. So that's an exciting development consideration as well, that the trains look pristine. Not only is the ride testing and operating, but it looks like they may have been putting some money into it.
I mean, the fact that it's able to run at all after
Yeah.
years of sitting in the desert is a good sign. They must have been doing something over time in order for it to complete cycles and for the train to look the way it does.
I think in the era of social media, with the right marketing, this ride could be revolutionary. Like, it's such a cool thing. It's always been amazing. It's just never had the right exposure. And I think now all they need is a good social media campaign. They need to start
and a free shuttle service from the
yeah,
strip.
they need to get some flyers and shit out there in the strip and like advertise, push this thing.
Yeah, but the question at the end is how profitable are they gonna be able to make that versus the marketing cost involved. I think they're better off marketing that shit on billboards on the freeway. So like, don't forget to stop and ride the world's biggest blah blah in the desert on the way to Vegas. Then they are putting flyers out on the street.
I mean, this roller coaster, it's
because like, imagine you're going down the hill and there's just a bunch of billboards that say like ride like whatever big like record breaker roller coaster.
Yeah, it's like even it's
like 5 miles ahead and you stop and you ride it. Anybody in their car driving by should be encouraged to just pull over for 30 minutes. And ride this thing. Like, instead of it being like a resort amenity, it should be marketed as its own attraction, and the hotel just exists.
Yeah, like treat it like a roadside mountain coaster. Be like, pull your car over, ride this thing, and buy a T-shirt or whatever. Because I can't believe that a roller coaster.
It's such a massive roller coaster. The ride, when you fly over, like it's clear, like you see the desert and the giant roller coaster. A record,
like this ride was the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world for 2 years. It was a huge thing when it was built. It's like,
and the ride is baller. It's a good roller coaster.
Surreal. Yeah. Oh, and it has a fabulous layout too. It's just positively surreal that a ride like that sits and is so under-attended and underappreciated when you consider the ridership of like similar rides like Magnum. But I digress. We're excited for the news, and we just can't wait to hear more. It was the most unexpected thing. Of all the things that I expected to recover from COVID, Desperado was not one of them, and it looks like it's got a fighting chance. So,
and now let's hop over to Europe and do our last European park we haven't talked about yet from our recent trip.
So originally we weren't going to do
an episode
of Disneyland Paris just because we have before, but then again it's like, well, we love Disneyland Paris.
And we had a couple of followers who were like, when is that episode coming out? So like, you know what, we'll just blend it in anyway.
Quality Coasters, which is like one of the biggest Instagram accounts on roller coasters based in Belgium, Quality_Coasters. He commented on one of our posts. He was like, when are you going to do the Disneyland Paris episode? And I was like, well, I don't know if we were going to, because I didn't think anybody wanted us to, but you want us to, and that's a good enough reason, so we're doing it. So here it is. This is the Disneyland Paris segment of our episode, because we did have a really fabulous time. It really is one of our favorite places in the world. So there's no reason there's no reason for us not to make some time and talk about it, even if we may not have a whole episode's worth of stuff to talk about right now.
So I think we
talked about it so much before.
I think the best part of our visit this time to Disneyland Paris was the fact that we went and there was literally no crowds. It wasn't because the weather was bad. It wasn't because we went on some off day. No, we went and slam in the middle of the summer, but COVID-19 kept those crowds away. So it was really pleasant being able to navigate the park and just have like a nearly empty Main Street, empty arcades on the sides of Main Street. Not having to wait for literally anything. Like, we walked onto every single attraction every single time.
We had a fabulous time. Sven surprised us.
We spent one day there, and we rode, like, Space Mountain, like, 7 or 8 times. We rode Big Thunder 4 times.
Tower Terror 3 times.
Tower Terror. We rode every major attraction at least once, except for Crush, because that had the special standby queue line, whatever, like the virtual standby thing.
Yeah.
So we had just a fabulous trip. Of course, the first thing we did was ride Hyperspace Mountain. Yeah. Because, we're addicted.
Hyperspace Mountain might be our favorite roller coaster now. Like, Tron has been our favorite since 2017. It's kind of like
Tron still has a soundtrack
icon,
polished, but
But Space Mountain is right there. It's like a two-way tie because they're both Vekoma icons with really fabulous film franchises that we love on their own merit, with great soundtracks, great audio, great dialogue, great aesthetic, great presence, great surrounding areas that really elevate the whole ride. I mean, it's funny, both rides, the one area that could be improved on both coasters is the queue. Because neither of them have very remarkable queues.
Oh, so that Tron's queue is obviously much better because it has that whole launch sequence, the pre-show.
And the pre-show is great,
And even though there's switchbacks, it looks decently polished.
Yeah.
That's where the queue for Hyperspace is, outside queue is the best part of the queue because you get to see the train take off through the canyon, which is cool. Obviously with that, and then appreciation, of course, always for Big Thunder Mountain there, and like how spectacular it's set up.
It was really crazy getting on Big Thunder Mountain without much. Like there was a 20-minute wait. We had to take a picture in front of the sign that said a 20-minute wait because every other time I've been to Disneyland Paris,
it's always been like 2 hours,
80 minutes minimum.
Even our last trip, when it wasn't even that super busy on like the second or third day, it was always like an hour and a half, 2 hour wait. For Big Thunder Mountain, which we obviously it's the most spectacular Big Thunder Mountain out there, hands down. But we never really got a chance to ride it a lot in one day because it's really hard to do, and there's so many other good rides that you don't have, you don't want to spend all day waiting for it. We used to burn our previous fast passes on Hyperspace. Of course, we also wrote Pirates of the Caribbean, which is phenomenal.
We wrote that at least 3 times. And we wrote Phantom Manor at least twice.
And then, the one thing I want to talk about a little bit this episode that we didn't discuss in the previous Disneyland Paris episodes we've done is I want to focus a little bit more this time on the Tower of Terror, A New Dimension of Chills, which was introduced in, I believe, 2018. Mm-hmm. And it is the reskin of Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. So for those who are familiar with Anaheim actually got Disneyland Paris' original. They were already manufacturing it, and they put it in California Adventure because California Adventure really needed it. Mm-hmm. And then Paris was delayed 4 years, and they got theirs in 2008. Well received. Everyone loved it. And so 10 years later, for the anniversary, they reintroduced it, and again, they gave it like a more modern edge. So this was a year after Guardians of the Galaxy became a thing in Anaheim. Yeah. They gave a similar makeover to the one in Paris. On a technical level, yeah. However, what they did in Paris was they kept the original theme, like the original idea. So it's Hollywood Tower of Terror, but they introduced kind of like a very highly detailed, high quality multimedia overlay that is now permanent, obviously. Yeah. And so what happens is the theme is a sandwich, what I love about it, because it's a really cool theme.
It's a great aesthetic,
the whole Hollywood thing. Like, especially in that park, it really works. Like, the moment you walk out of the Studio One entrance to the park, you walk through the soundstage directly at the tower. Like, it's like the center beam of the park.
Like,
it is the center
great
part. Yeah,
feel.
exactly. Like,
I love the buildings in the foreground, the very, like, Art Deco.
Yeah, but the moment you walk in, that's like the first thing you see. Like, it is the castle of that park, which is really cool. So they obviously didn't want to change that to Guardian shit, which it may in the future after Adventure Campus opens. Like, it wouldn't be surprising, but it's a cult classic. It has so many lovers. It is like maybe the most popular besides Florida's is really popular too. But anywho, so what they did is they kept the original theme, and they took the little girl from the pre-show. And she is now the main character. So there's 3 shafts, 6 stations, and every shaft has an upper and lower station.
When we wrote it in 2020, we got 2 sides of it because we wrote it twice, and we didn't realize that all 3 sides were the little, like, we knew they were different, but we didn't know how. So
before going in, I wasn't sure if like the 3rd shaft maybe had a different character that did something, but it's the little girl for all 3, which is really cool.
But the little girl plays a totally different role
in each tower.
So
the nice thing is that each tower has a randomized drop sequence, much like Guardians. And then the theme of each shaft is very different. So on one shaft, she plays like a devilish child, really, like a possessed little child that is like haunting the elevator and is in charge of making
she's like possessed.
She is like in charge of
she's
of the whole happening.
Us. Yeah,
and it's a very dark tone. It's very that's probably the most haunting
really the
one,
scariest one.
And when we say scary, we mean like it's not just like the other Tower of Terror.
This is like Fright Fest level. Like, this is like haunt level.
They really made a point of making this like
nightmarish,
much like Paris, like really making it like just a little more intense than the other Disney parks.
The tone is really jarring, but like in a compelling way.
And the ride sequences, of course,
of course, are the most intense.
They are randomized, so like all the little like things that happen with like the mirror scene, and like the little girl doing whatever like dialogue she has, which is a mix of English and French, which is really cool.
It's the code switching.
It's the code switching in the middle of the sentence for me.
Yeah,
and then
shout out to the bellhops because they do that too. They're all of their spiels and stuff while they're loading the vehicles. They do an amazing job of code switching while also staying in character.
But yeah, so those scenes on the screens are really like separated by all the drop sequences, which is cool. The second shaft is we are all in it together. Yeah. So like she is with us.
Yeah.
And like
we're trapped together, and she's sort of coaching us through.
And she's
the
like,
trauma.
"Don't scream! It makes it worse." But like, she tells us that, and then like obviously you drop.
Yeah.
And it's just as haunting, but this time like she's in it with us. So she is terrified. Like she is screaming and crying and like telling us like don't scream. Like it only make it worse.
Yeah.
Which is really, really cool. And that one has a little more color to it, but still a very dark tone.
Yeah.
And then there's the third shaft, which is the most unique, and I think my favorite.
Yeah. And this is the one that we had rode for the first time. We had ridden for the first time on this particular visit.
Luckily, we got to ride it twice on this visit on that particular tower. And that's where we are. We're trapped inside the dimension of chills, like a different dimension, and she's outside of it trying to reach in and
she's
like
trying
save us.
To drag us out.
So it's a little lighter because she's really positive and she's really like trying to rescue us. She's like telling us like, oh my God, like,
she says,
I can see you. Can you see me?
I can get you out of here. Come with me.
And she's like, wait, I can see you. I can see you. And then you drop.
Yeah,
like she's like freaked out that she like lost touch with you and then you drop.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
She's like a medium to the dimension that we're in, and she's like trying to remain in contact with us and lead us out of there.
And then this shaft has like a lot of color going on.
It's literally
because the dimension, like every time you look at like the screens, like the mirror scene and stuff, it's just like a regular like a bubble with all these colors, and then she's poking through it, like trying to like, get us and take us out of the dimension to like bring us back to safety. And then like anytime you like do your drop cycles, there's a lot of different colored lights. It's almost like a disco in there. But, with a darker overtone
into the shaft and like the LEDs lighting up the shaft in different colors, and it just gives a totally different tone. Like I guess that's what's really amazing is that while Guardians definitely has different scene sequences for each shaft and a different song for each vehicle, the tone, like the pretty much the same story is told. You achieve the same conclusion at the end of each ride on Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, regardless of which tower or which shaft you're in. But on New Dimension of Chills, Tower of Terror, like the kind of story that's being told
is very different. It's not just like, we're breaking out and like, we're taking off at the end. Like, thanks for rescuing us.
The little girl
goodbye.
is 3 different people or 3 different characters.
And I think the most
get.
impressive, and this is a shout out to whoever this little child actor is that this little child actor is code switching repeatedly, very convincing. I mean, this is not like, don't take this lightly. This is actually like kind of thrilling. Like it is like kind of horror-ish.
The dialogue
it's kind of scary.
is really, really well delivered.
Especially like her emotion and her crying and stuff. And then I think what the greatest thing is, and the finale is all the same for all 3 of them.
Before you disembark on all 3.
So you know how it's like it's tied into Twilight Zone, but unlike the Hollywood Studios version in Florida. There really aren't any touches to the Twilight Zone franchise, except for the little girl being somewhat similar, but not at all like the girl from the pre-show.
Yeah, in fact, we had the pre-show wasn't even running for us on this visit
because of COVID.
And because we were thinking about it, like no one would have any idea that this was related to the Twilight Zone,
which is really interesting
without the pre-show.
Because obviously Twilight Zone is a ride that Disney has to pay for, and they could literally drop the word Twilight Zone / Coton Dimension.
Yeah,
and they could literally just keep the little girl and make it no longer Twilight Zone themed, and just change the pre-show.
Like there's really no need for them to even,
except for one part, and that's the very finale where they tie the whole thing back together. And so like she come back down to the station, and the little girl like looks at you and she's like, I warned you. And then she like sings the little song.
Singing the
like, and then like
it's like swirling around and then she evaporates.
And then the TV shuts off and you're like it's black again.
and then you disembark and you're just like in shock. You're like,
holy shit, that was so good.
What was that?
Obviously, we've done all current versions of all Towers of Terror, and we're going to get so much hate for this, but this is by
Paris
far...
is our favorite.
By far, because I love the original theme of the Hollywood. I think it's really clever, like Disney had to come up with something, and if you watch the episode on Imagineering, which they pay no attention to the Paris one for some magical reason, except for like the cast member that's really
the new, what's it called, the behind the attraction. Behind the attraction.
Yeah, we won't give our opinion, but they don't spend a lot of time on the Paris Tower.
The fact that they didn't talk about a New Dimension of Chills and Behind the Attraction is a crime.
But you can kind of see like how much effort went into creating this like Hollywood attraction that really was going to become an icon for Disney, and I think that the version that they built, the current version of the Paris one, really pays homage to the original story, but lives in like a 2021 kind of world, right? It feels modern, it feels thrilling, it feels
it's the
very like physical G-force is high thrill, but also just like mental thriller, like horror thriller. Like you really, it's a scary attraction in like all dimensions, literally. And like the one here, which is really kind of like dumped down and a little more basic and very old school, and it feels more like a classic.
I feel
here.
like this ride
feels like a really up to date, like crazy ride.
If you love the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror in Orlando, if you love any iteration of this ride and its original theme and aesthetic, this is the ride that you deserve. This is the ride that a Twilight Zone Tower of Terror fan.
Let's do some armchair Imagineering here. I mean, we were riding it earlier today, Tower of Terror, and I was like, you know what? When you get upstairs to the scene where like the actual elevator detaches from the first shaft and moves towards the second shaft for the drop sequence, That big room is just a retelling of the pre-show. It's the same character, same like window
It's just
clock.
the title sequence.
The same
they
stuff.
use the window gag way too many times.
So, in my opinion, I'm like, they should take that room, gut it, put some like ultra high media stuff in there, like maybe like walls towards the edges that have projection mapping,
4K projection,
and then turn that into
technology.
a scene that changes every time. So when you ride Tower of Terror in Disney's Hollywood Studios in Florida, that if you ride it 2 or 3 times in a row, you get 3 different scenes. And I think it's really easy because they have that giant room to work with that the whole vehicle has to move through. So I think if they really wanted to, they could cut out that Twilight Zone bullshit and like take the pre-show and keep it only downstairs and like change that upstairs hallway and really make it like a different dimension.
There is that ride has a lot of potential.
I mean, could you imagine the little girl like popping everywhere?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they could do so much with it.
They could make it really scary and take the little girl.
They could take the Paris concept that they introduced just for Paris and like literally apply it to like a different kind of building structure here in Orlando.
They may very well do, because I think the reception to the Paris remodel has been extremely strong.
I think it's still the most popular ride there. I mean, who doesn't love it? It's like the icon for the resort.
I think it's honestly the most popular ride, like resort wide. Even though
maybe Big Thunder's a little popular, but Big Thunder and that.
But I don't think there's a ride at Disneyland Paris that has a culture surrounding it that's as dramatic and intense as Tower of Terror.
And honestly, it's always been that way. Even when they first introduced it,
that is a cultural phenomenon.
I mean, let's not forget 2008 was the first like profitable year where they were able to pay off all the banks and keep some money for within the company, up to them actually buying the resorts out from the French banks. So yes, definitely something that should be on your priority list when you go to that park. And I just think that it doesn't get enough recognition. Like, when do you hear people talk about the Paris Tower? Never.
When we talked about it, what feels like an eon ago, when we talked about it, when we rode it in 2020 in February, when we bought our annual passes and rode the New Dimension of Chills for the first time, we were
really
still
impressed.
Blown away. And this time, rewriting it just...
especially after,
it was even better than I remember.
Especially after a year of like doing Walt Disney World weekly and doing Tower of Terror with no wait weekly, we started really like figuring out the differences. We've had a lot of experience on Guardians in Anaheim because that's where we used to live and we used to go there every week. So it's just really fun to see that all 4 towers are so different, and I just love that Paris got to keep the original theme, but got to get like a Guardians level like reimagining within.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the exterior has always remained the same.
The temptation was there for them to give it a Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, I think they realized after Guardians, like, wow, we can really do so much with this ride system, and that's what the behind the attraction even talks about. It's like, you know what, we can actually. This thing hasn't reached its limits yet. We can really do much more with this ride system. We can program it way better. We can make it much more thrilling than it has been. And I think once they did it for Guardians, they realized, like, hey, we can do much more with this. We have 3 identical towers. I mean, all different themes. Let's go to Paris, the resort with by far the most thrilling attractions, where the guest really expects, like, airtime and forces and thrills and horror. And let's apply it there. And I think that was a no-brainer for them, and I'm so glad they did it. And I'm so glad they spent the money on not just keeping it the same old, like, Tower of Terror and just, like, intensifying the drop sequence, but actually spending money on, like, reimagining 3 shafts, creating a whole new story, and making that one of the rides for like, shit, I go right back in line. I mean, it was pouring rain, and we got right back in line.
They know that the people there worship that ride and pay very close attention to what happens, because there's probably more details than even where we can appreciate. There's going to be things that you notice on like your 12th ride of that ride, where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that.
Yeah, we're going to definitely YouTube that before we go to bed tonight.
Yeah. Oh, totally. But yeah,
that's really the focus, I think, of this episode that we wanted to bring more towards Disneyland Paris. I mean, Disneyland Paris is like, we had an episode in early 2020, definitely look it up, season 2, where we were obviously way into Disneyland Paris, and this was right before the pandemic hit.
That was also your first ride on like Hyperspace Mountain.
So we have a lot.
So Hyperspace Mountain definitely took priority in that episode, talking about it. But this time, Tower of Terror really was like one of the biggest takeaways of our.
It's funny because we also did Tower of Terror when it was still the original in France on our trip when Hyperspace was down.
Yeah,
so we actually do have quite a bit of Disneyland Paris content out there. So I guess this was really one of those episodes. So I'm like, we can retell the same story. Like, oh, we love Hyperspace, but we have a whole episode
Plus,
for that.
It's hard for us not to bring up Disneyland Paris in the context of other conversations about Disney parks, because in a lot of ways, Disneyland Paris is the bar.
Yeah,
it's for castle parks. It's absolutely the standard upon which the other 5 castle parks are judged for me.
And it's really funny because a lot of people just don't think of it that way. And I believe there's a lot of negative connotation around the Paris park. And I mean, my first visit wasn't perfect, but it's one thing I've always said. And even on the visit when Hyperspace was closed and I was really bummed and I really had not that great of a day, the park is super polished. It's beautiful. It has all these themed areas that are beautifully developed, highly detailed, walkthroughs. It has so much to do. It's by far the prettiest Fantasyland. It is the precursor to what Shanghai did, and still Shanghai can't top the detail. Shanghai feels bland.
Our time at Shanghai Disney, we were like really blown away.
Which we too have spent at least 10 days to Shanghai Disney.
The more we go to Disneyland Paris, the more we have to admit to ourselves the characteristics that we love about Shanghai Disney that it owes Disneyland Paris to.
Yeah, exactly. They aren't unique to Shanghai.
There's a lot of Shanghai Disney. There's a lot of Disneyland Paris walked so Shanghai Disney could run kind of stuff. And I think Disney Sea actually is also in the same boat.
I mean, we mustn't forget that the majority of Disney Sea's projects are canceled Disneyland Paris projects that were then bought over by the Oriental Land Company because Journey to Center of the Earth is a Paris concept.
Yeah, literally,
Indiana Jones was supposed to be for Paris.
Literally, all of Lost River Delta, all of
Mexico,
Mystery Island.
Well, that is, sorry, as you just mentioned,
and everything in Port Discovery. All of that was Disneyland Paris. All of it. That entire triage of attractions was, in some way, shape, or form, the seed was sown for Disneyland Paris. And everything that was left on the editing room floor when it came to budgets, especially with the financial problems that Disneyland Paris ran into right away, all of that, it was like Disney Sea basically already had a park that was designed for them, and all they had to do was add some supporting acts. They're like, okay, we have to have a USA area
and open it.
We have to have a Mediterranean area. We want to do a Middle Eastern area. We want to do Aladdin. We want to do Sinbad. We want to do Little Mermaid. There was a lot of obvious things that they did, but I still feel like the bread and butter of that whole operation, literally the center of that park, was leftover Imagineering that was inspired by Jules Verne, Discoveryland for Disneyland Paris. So,
yes.
Basically, the long and short of it is you can't talk about what's great about Disney and not talk about Disneyland Paris because so much.
Which actually is, if you, again, Behind the Attraction, if you watch that, the Castles episode really gives a really nice shout out to Paris, where Disney pretty much admitted, this is the best castle.
And definitely the Imagineering story.
I mean, France has 45,000 castles. We gotta do something that doesn't look like just a regular castle and do something fun with it.
Yeah.
And having, people that worked on Notre Dame, actually do, the stained glass and stuff, and building the walkthrough that's below the castle. I mean, Disneyland Paris, again, we've talked about this in previous episodes and articles, there was such a struggle to convince the European market, hey, Disney's welcome here, that they put every single penny they had. They built 7 hotels. They did all they could.
That's what makes the financial hardship of the resort all the more heartbreaking.
I know, because they spent more, I feel like they gave Disneyland Paris more love and passion than they even gave,
Disney World at
the time. And just for it to be it's a struggle journey. I mean, they're getting there. And Walt Disney Studios, Frozen is going vertical. The Adventure Campus is looking like it's going to open spring next year. We're going to have an Iron Man roller coaster, Spider-Man Dark Ride.
We will be on the next plane to Paris.
There should be another e-ticket for Adventure Campus. So they're finally getting to the point, and I'm sure that Disneyland Paris, after years and years of no official big new e-tickets, I'm sure that they're eventually going to see Indiana Jones or Tron or Mickey and Minnie,
Runaway Railway.
There's a lot, and I think that Disneyland Paris is on the right track. The new hotel, New York, Art of Marvel, looks one of the best looking Disney hotels they've created. They have the largest selection of artwork from Marvel in the world.
Disneyland Paris Hotel is under remodel.
They're going to get remodeled.
It's getting a bunch of money poured into it.
Yeah, we're going to be renewing our season passes, and we don't even live in Europe.
Yeah.
So, but again, we're clearly fans, and I think a lot of people have an idea of Disneyland Paris from maybe 5-10 years ago, which is not the most positive. But I convince you, give it some love. That park, even during the pandemic, has been investing and keeping it up. I mean, Magic Kingdom looked like, honestly, kind of like trash after the pandemic. I feel like Walt Disney World, all money stopped immediately. There was no touching it. In Disneyland Paris, they repainted everything, and they landscaping was improved, and they fixed the entrance to Walt Disney Studios, which was concrete.
Yeah,
the concrete was a mess. Remember that?
They're putting money in places that I think really matter,
like
infrastructurally,
infrastructurally,
really like.
And it's hard to even get it in Walt Disney World for the 50th anniversary, but Disneyland Paris does it no matter what.
The fact that like when Walt Disney World does something that's really sorely needed, it's like we're so quick to give them praise for doing things that like any self-respecting amusement park should already be doing, like repainting the ticketing and transportation center. It's like finally they had a good excuse to do it by painting the ticketing and transportation center the 50th anniversary colors, when really
it should have been done years ago.
It should have been done years ago because it looked horrible for an extremely long time. Disneyland Paris, they don't have the luxury of being lazy.
I mean, to be fair, Disney Village needs some love. The hotels at Disneyland Paris need some love, but they're getting it.
Yeah.
And despite the pandemic, Art of Marvel was still constructed. Despite the pandemic, the new entrance to Walt Disney Studios was still constructed. But despite the pandemic, Disney Village's projects moved on. Despite the pandemic, Disneyland Park, or Park Disneyland, looks in the best state I've ever seen it in. It is a beautiful. It's just a really nice park, and they kept it up during the pandemic, and that's just not the same for Anaheim and
their landscaping department at Disneyland Paris pops off. Like I love that they have the little cottage.
I mean, that's just Europe for you. I mean, flowers, like, plants, landscaping, gardens.
You
it's
can tell
just the European
it's like
thing.
It's the whole Venetian meets Parisian. Or not Venetian.
I was going to say not Venetian.
Not Venetian. Parisian and Versailles.
Yeah.
Like having those two like aesthetics as inspiration for like the hub, for example, it's so obvious. It's so obvious that they're like, well, this is a resort that is sharing a continent, sharing a country with some of the most breathtakingly beautiful and meticulously manicured spaces in the world.
Disneyland Paris is honestly the most accessible.
Very.
Because you have bullet trains running there, you have direct trains to the airport running there, you got metro lines running there, you've got easy park access for easy parking access for Europeans, bus lines. It's like handily the most easily accessible Disney park when it comes to public transit. I mean, the whole resort is built on top of like its custom train station.
Yeah.
It's just like it's easy stuff.
The whole thing, yeah.
Sven just pulled up into a parking lot. This is all easy
brilliant.
stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the parking structure is it's going to currently be completely covered in solar panels, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But even the parking, I think, is one of the nicest setups with like the covered moving walkways and like the really colorful entrance. I just think that on an international scale, the resort doesn't get enough attention. It really doesn't. Everyone's always like really busy talking about parks that I don't think even get close to the quality of Paris. Only thing that Paris really struggles with is food.
The food is unfortunate.
It just really isn't a strong suit. You'll be spending a lot of money on not that great food, but honestly, just go to Fabiano. So it's right in Disney Village.
Yeah.
So. But enough Disneyland Paris. Let's hop over to the main topic, which sort of is the main topic.
Yeah, this was an episode. Yeah, we definitely had already teased this topic, and then we kind of were thinking about it on our drive home from Hollywood Studios today. We're like, can we really fill a whole episode with the Mac Extreme Spinners?
We could, but do we want to? Like, do you want that?
Because we started the conversation with our episode on Plopsaland de Pana.
And the conversation continued on thecoastakings.com, where we really discussed kind of like what what Time Traveler versus Tomorrowland, or Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland really is kind of like what are both strong suits? And we're like, well, you know what? I don't want to sound like a broken record. Let's not repeat ourselves. So we'll do just like maybe like a 15-minute, 20-minute kind of discussion. Like, hey, what is between the two Mac Extreme Spinners? What are the strong suits of each? Which one do we, I guess, like better at the end? So I guess I'm just going to start with the strong suits. The strong suits for both. I'll start with the strong suit for Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City is that it's located in the valley. Like it has the landscaping aspect.
Yeah.
When are you ever going to find a roller coaster that has a station where you can literally drop out a station at 90 degrees at like how many feet? Like 100 feet?
Over 100 feet.
And do like and
you
spin
take
on your way down.
Right into the business end of the ride.
I mean, the start to Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland is cute, having that like yo-yo roll.
Yeah, the 90-degree turn JoJo roll is a fun way to start.
But it's not quite as spectacular starting with the drop out of station. Now, luckily, that 90-degree drop, you do have it early in the ride on Ride to Happiness. Like it's right after it's part of the top hat situation. So you still get that sensation, but I still think that one of the coolest starts to any ride in the world is really dropping like 100 plus feet spinning.
I think
90 degrees.
Both rides are
on that
so
ride.
magnificent and so perfectly executed that I don't think there's one that's necessarily objectively better. It's really going to come down to taste.
Well, I get what you're saying because like one ride, I think one ride has the clearly better ride layout. I think one ride has a significantly like upgraded, almost like X2 versus the Anaconda level. Like
that's
wow,
fair.
like
That's
really
that's a good analogy.
You know, because at the end of the day, Silverdale City's Time Traveler was the first. It was like a lot of like testing the water. I mean, it's like New Texas Giant, and then having like stuff like Steel Engines, you know?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where like Silverado Cities had a really cool, unique terrain. I think the terrain is way cool, and I think
the
starting like that's
topography
really cool.
and the positioning of the ride is the one thing that people will say is still better than
I think Ride
to Happiness, but then everything else probably belongs to Ride to Happiness.
It's just a way more intense, longer, extremer coaster where they started making movements that are just crazy compared to what Time Traveler.
That drop out of the station into the dive loop on Time Traveler comes at a price because the train will park before the first actual launch, and it's one point of the ride where it feels like the pacing is broken a bit, whereas with Ride to Happiness, obviously the start of the ride with the JoJo roll is fun, but not quite as spectacular. But then once you park for the first launch after the JoJo roll and take off,
stop till the break.
The ride just keeps going. It's unrelenting. It feels like a more thrilling, breathtaking ride because there's no time to break. There's no time to catch your breath.
Speaking of launches, the second launch on Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland has that Copperhead Strike airtime.
Except that this one actually has airtime.
So like you really get pulled down, especially in the back car. As well, like the second launch on Time Traveler is a little more basic. It's just kind of like a really highly elevated, like upward ramp, just like because you clearly have to make it all the way back up the hill, and I think it's really obvious. Like it's like this is the mechanism to get you back up there. As where on Ride to Happiness, it's the mechanism to like launch into the second half of the ride and do that crazy shit twice.
Yeah, I will say that like I think Time Traveler's only real drawback when compared to Ride to Happiness is the way Time Traveler feels a little disjointed in its pacing because you get that you could split the ride up into thirds, and they're not even thirds. You get a great start out of the station. I would say they're pretty
even thirds because the start out of the station has the major drop, the dive loop, and then the zigzag up, and then you stop.
Yeah.
Then you have the launch, obviously, which marks the start of the second section. You have the overbank, the vertical loop, that like little like.
And then it kind of figure eights its way back.
Thingy, and then a zero G roll, and then into the break. I mean, into the next launch, and then you have that big zigzag. So I think it's pretty deep. I mean, the middle third is the largest.
I mean, what I would argue is that everything after the last launch definitely feels less compared to the rest of the ride. And I guess psychologically, the first time I rode it, I kind of you get that amazing launch and all that height, and your brain says there's more ride coming, and then it feels like it ends abruptly.
I mean, it does, because there's like 2 turns and you stop. But even on Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland, after the second launch, it's like the shortest third. Like the shortest third is, or like 2/3 of the ride are between the first launch and the second launch, and then like after the second launch. The elements are very intense, but you really don't spend much time.
I disagree. I think
because you do that snake dive up, right? The reverse snake dive. Then you have an airtime hill. You have a sharp overbank turn, and then you have 2 airtime hills to the break run. It really doesn't do that much.
I would still argue that I would say it's like 60-40. I wouldn't say that 2/3 of the ride happens after the first launch because the JoJo roll is before the first launch.
Well, yeah. Well, what I'm trying to say is that. Including the JoJo roll, by the time you end, like you leave the second launch, is when like you have 1/3 of the ride left.
I would
because you have JoJo roll launch, upward, downward, that weird banana roll.
But I think
vertical loop,
I think there's like
0G roll,
after each launch, there's like the same number of elements after each launch. The first launch has top hat with the turn in it, so it's like 2. Has the banana roll. So let's say that's 3.
Vertical loop,
that's 4.
0G roll.
0G roll, that's 5.
S-turn.
And then the S-turn, so that's 6.
6. But then you have the second launch, and then you have snake dive, airtime hill, overbank turn.
2 airtime hills, so that's 5.
4 or 5. I mean, I kind of more like a double up because you definitely don't go back to the ground. Like you definitely like double up into the brake run.
So I would still argue that the ride is like, it's like you get 10% of it when you roll out of the station into the launch, and then you get
50 to 40.
45% of it after the first launch, and then another 35%.
So where's the other 10%?
Is that not 10?
Oh no.
10,
No, because you have
10, 45, 35. Does that make sense?
No, because then you have 90%. You need 10 more.
Well, 45 plus 45. Okay, so okay, I see. I'm sorry. Look, I'm a flight attendant. I can't do math. If I could do math, I'd be doing something else probably.
Okay.
So it's 10, 50, 40.
It really doesn't matter that much. The main point of this conversation is to compare the two more of like their quality and their setting and stuff. So I mean, yeah, okay, they have a little bit of a different distribution between launches, but it also becomes.
I guess I would just say
one starts on like top of a hill,
pacing,
the other one is not. It's like on flat land.
The pacing for Time Traveler is more forgiving.
But to be fair,
but on Ride to Happiness, it's more aggressive because you don't get that break.
I mean, I think overall, like again, it's like X2 versus Dynacon. Like you think Time Traveler has quite some kick to it, but then you ride to Happiness, you're like, wow, this is honestly kind of crazy. And of course, Ride to Happiness is onboard audio, has a light package, and half the ride is over water.
Yeah.
And I think that the elements that they introduced that are very, very different. Of course, like the vertical loop, the zero G roll, in a way, even the banana roll, like they all kind of feel like the same intensity as Time Traveler. But the elements that they introduced that are definitely way more intense than Time Traveler are the reverse snake drive, which is absolutely insane. Like how fast you rush into that and how you like flip upside down twice in like a matter of a couple seconds.
Yeah.
And then you have that double airtime hill, like the double up back into the brake run. I mean, I literally got undressed. My shirt popped out of my like tucked in collar.
I mean, I think the single scariest moment on that ride is after the snake dive. That airtime hill after the flying snake is so violent.
Yeah.
I like my soul.
That's funny because the first half of the ride
body.
is really intense. So like, holy shit, this is an intense
ride. And then the second half of the ride.
And then it just like takes off into oblivion.
Like, I guess that's why I still feel like it's an even keel, like it's 50-50 for me, because I would say that
both halves
are equally intense. It's just that intensity is packed into a shorter amount of space. So also, one of the well, not so much a complaint, but I guess one thing to consider is that like Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland opened, and aesthetically it's not complete yet, but you go in knowing that they were still working on it. They're still landscaping the lagoon, the waterfall and stuff. There was stuff that was added to the ride, right after we left. It already looks more dressed up than it did on our visit at the end of July.
I mean, much more focus was spent on Ride to Happiness for landscaping, because obviously it didn't have like natural landscaping.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't needed for Time Traveler, because Time Traveler, again, like it's built on a hill and you dive down the valley and you do all that shit, and it's like it's in the woods. Like it's really cool. Natural landscape that's already pre-existent doesn't really need any additional landscaping, I don't think. I think thematically speaking, Ride to Happiness is very fun and weird and different, like the cottagecore steampunk sort of situation. Yeah. Very fun. But also, I really like the steampunk addressing of Time Traveler, but Time Traveler's logo is awesome. And then like doing the 3-layer queue, where like you have 3 levels of queue and station. Mm-hmm. I think it's really clever. I think that the queue for Ride to Happiness is a little weird when like you start underneath the maintenance barn. And then you have a little bit of indoor theming, and then you go outside and you just kind of do a big loop around the brake run, and there's like a little pond and I think weird water wheel. And then you go back underneath the station.
It's getting there. It's still I think the thing in the station with the face is really dope. Yeah. With like harmonicals that like adjust themselves.
I mean, whoever's read our articles and like listened to our previous podcast, there's no denying that we definitely think Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland is the better ride in almost every single way. But there's a couple things that I think Time Traveler still deserves a shout out for. Another moment on Time Traveler that isn't discussed yet is the S turn that comes after the vertical loop. Yeah, that's really intense and maybe may just be as intense as like the last airtime hill on Ride to Happiness. That's the one moment that I always remember on Time Travel. I'm like, oh shit, this is like surprisingly intense compared to the rest of it.
Because but you have that one moment on Time Traveler, and like Ride to Happiness has like 4 moments like that. Because the airtime hill going into the second launch and the airtime hill coming out of the snake dive are similar in that like angle change, like directional change airtime, and then the double up airtime coming into the brakes is just like a victory laps for that.
And
ride.
I will say that I think Time Traveler's color scheme and overall presentation is a little nicer. Yeah, because I think it fits better with the parks theme. It blends in well. It fits really nice with like the aesthetic of the ride. The colors of the trains really work with the colors of the track. it's something I'm like, you look at that and you're like, wow, it's like the whole package just really works. It's very Silverdale City.
Yeah.
And then you have Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland, which is definitely not Plopsaland.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way it is because they built it, but it's definitely not really what you're used to from Plopsaland. And I don't know if I like the red with the white supports that much. I mean, I'm not really like attached to it. I'm like, okay, I mean, it's a fine color scheme, but it's not. I think the dark colors on Time Traveler are kind of like they really work with the aesthetic of the ride. I think, and I think. There's only so much you can do when your park is also a family-friendly park and you don't just want to have like a pitch black roller coaster standing in the middle of your park. It doesn't really work the same. But I'm not entirely sure if I like the color scheme all that much, to be honest. But of course, and then there's the train differences. The trains on Ride to Happiness have that light-up effect at night, but the trains on Time Traveler have
the hardware
the numbers,
and the seat,
like
really
the
fun.
LED that works. So I think that's kind of cool. What other differences haven't we discussed yet?
I'm trying to think. I feel like that covers the majority of it. I mean, Ride to Happiness has a bar at the exit/entrance. The entrance plaza has a bar. I think that's really fun. I'm excited to see more pictures of the Ride to Happiness subsection of Plopsaland because I know when we saw it, they were still working on it. So I didn't want to judge the way, like the overall curb appeal of the ride just yet because I was just glad it was open. It was kind of like riding Caraco at Olympus Park Trip Stroll in 2013, and like the ride was open and complete, but all of the theming was still under construction, like majorly under construction. Like everything was dirt and cinder blocks and scaffolding, and yet the ride was open. So, I think that pretty much covers it. I guess we would both argue. I guess the one thing, probably the biggest difference between the two rides for me personally is my initial reaction to Time Traveler, which was that I wasn't actually crazy about Time Traveler the first time I rode it.
Oh, same here. I mean, on the first trip we rode Wildfire, like definitely more, even though the lines are about the same.
Whereas
but then on our last trip in 2020, like after the pandemic,
it grew on us.
We rode Time Traveler all day instead.
Yeah,
like, wow, this is really great.
But then our first rides on Ride to Happiness were like, wow.
But okay, when I say something that I am not alone in, I know that I'm not alone in this, is that Time Traveler is glass smooth. I've never had an inch of rattle.
Yeah.
But on Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland, that ride is so intense. I had on one of our rides an incredible bouncing sensation. Yeah. And then Austin from Amusement Insider, he rode it like a couple days after us, and he's like, talk about this ride. I'm like, yes, I know I'm not crazy. Like I really felt a crazy balance that I've never felt before, and it was almost like giving me a headache. So like, for all things considered, I think that Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland is just much more intense, and like it puts way more stress on the
shuffle
trains.
Reminds me of a 4D coaster. I mean, there's a lot of things about that ride that remind me of a 4D coaster, but like the shuffling, the bouncing of the ride, definitely reminds me of being ragdolled through an Alan Schilke 4D coaster too.
Yeah, like a kind of thing.
Just being like shaken.
Okay, but on that topic, I do think this is the new. I think it's the new 4D coaster because, in all intents and purposes, it is 4D because it does this thing where like your cars are spinning. Yeah. And so like you are having that extra.
That dimension. Is the fourth dimension.
And your inversions. I mean, these are intense rides. There's a lot they can do with it, and it has a lot more variety they can do with it than they could with like the winged 4D coasters. So I really hope to see this in more parks. And honestly, Magic Mountain, if you're listening, this should be your next X2. You posted today on Instagram like, I wonder what can top X2.
This is it.
This can top X2.
You put one of these on top of Samurai Summit.
Make a theme to some sort of like crazy ninja star like weapon, and we have ourselves a winner.
There you go.
So Six Flags, you're welcome for the idea.
You're up.
Next.
Okay, so our final hot topic, I think, is we wanted to touch on this year's Golden Ticket Awards. Since it was canceled last year, we've got 2 years worth of subject matter. We've been voters on the Golden Ticket Awards
for 4 or 5
quite
years.
a few years. I've been on
you've been on the
for 10 years. This year we
always had a bit of a criticism on how the voting was done because we tried getting some of our European friends on our European coaster travelers on the voter list, and they weren't submitted. And I'm like, well, it's starting to become like this pool of voters that are the same voters in the same area. And then we started traveling, and that gap became too obvious. People were like, we've been to like these Asian parks. I mean, we're privileged, right? We're happy that we got to go.
We're very fortunate.
But we've been to all these European parks, all these Asian parks, in the middle of freaking China. We've ridden some really cool, awesome shit. And then the GTAs are like just like circle jerking around. Still, what's it called? Millennium Force again. Yeah. Like, well, Millennium Force is fine, but like it's not it's not some of the stuff we've written out in like Europe, Asia,
Yeah.
like even elsewhere in the U.S. And so it became more and more obvious, and now we've had a 2-year gap, and I'm like, what the hell is this list?
I feel
What's going
like
on?
this was way more than in past years because there's always been
And we didn't vote
pushback.
this year for the record, so we're not like criticizing.
We didn't vote this. Yeah, the only reason. And
But that's not why we're criticizing, but we're criticizing.
we were
kinda
just
just
we
like
didn't have
going on board with
to.
it.
We ran out of time because we were moving, so
Yeah.
like we weren't able to vote this year. We'll vote next year if they don't kick us off of the panel for recording this episode about it.
It's not the end of the world.
But
Try me.
just going through the winners, like so Europa Park winning best park. That's kind of a nice change of pace. Like when the first time that happened, it was such a relief to see a park other than Cedar Point win because Cedar Point is just so far and away
Yeah.
from my idea of best park. Europa Park is much
There's
much
better parks in
closer.
Ohio.
Yeah. But like Europa Park isn't perfect, but it's definitely much closer to world's greatest park than Cedar Point will ever be. Best water park, Schlitterbahn. I've never been to Schlitterbahn because I have no desire to go to Schlitterbahn because it just doesn't look like it's for me. When we're
Yeah.
doing water stuff, water parks and pools and stuff, we're looking for like premium, polish, swim up bars. Something like Sound Waves at the Gaylord Opryland Resort in
modern, I guess,
Nashville.
yeah.
Something that feels really modern, cohesive, well put together.
Volcano Bay, that sort of thing.
Volcano Bay is strong. Some of the water parks that we've seen in China offer really, really premium experiences, and I'm not gonna pass a lot of judgment on Schlitterbahn because this is not really a park that I've
But
been
I think
to.
a lot of people would be like, it's kind of weird that Schlitterbahn is like somehow still considered the best water park in the world.
It's certainly got a lot to do.
By far has like no polish. It's really
just
not that pretty.
It's definitely for me. I don't think people want to admit that Schlitterbahn is definitely an acquired taste, and like I'll never really say from personal experience because I have such a low motivation to go there because I know that it's not my gig and I'm not gonna. It's not gonna be the kind of thing where I'm like, oh, I want to. I'm in Texas. Like I really want to spend my time at Schlitterbahn. Like there's never gonna be me. But nevertheless, I mean, it's quite the asset for Cedar Fair. I keep forgetting that Cedar Fair acquired them. Schlitterbahn as a company has definitely been through a lot. Especially after the Verrückt incident, like my desire to go to any Schlitterbahn park, like fell into like negative numbers because I already wasn't interested, and then after like dealing with the completely preventable death of a 9-year-old boy because of some stupid water slide that was designed by people without engineering degrees, I'm like, yeah, okay, so my desire to go to these places is like even lower now. Like now we've got people with Schlitterbahn polos in jail. Like this is somehow I'm not surprised. But nevertheless, I mean, again, I'm not going to say like, oh, I don't like these parks, even though I've never been, but I am going to say these are why I'm not going. This is why I don't really care.
And it's also like, I'm not entirely sure if they are actually the best theme parks.
But yeah,
Again,
I would be highly skeptical.
But I think if this was a poll of a larger international voter base, then this would have not even played.
Yeah.
And I guess that's
because
kind
I
of
think Europeans and Asians would look at
Europeans have
Schlitterbahn.
phenomenal water parks.
Yeah.
The water parks on like the Mediterranean coast are phenomenal.
Yeah, Siam Park,
exactly.
Galaxy Erding,
And all these indoor water parks.
Rulantica. I mean, the list goes on. There's fabulous water parks. The one there's a really premium water park up
Europeans do water parks
in Scandinavia. I believe it's. Isn't there one? What's that one major water park that's like in Sweden? Like, is it near Kolmarden? There's one water park. We YouTubed all of the water slides, and it was just like this sensational looking.
I kind of forgot, but yeah,
You know what I'm talking about. There's got to be people listening to us that know what we're talking about. But there's like a really premium like Swedish water park that.
And
is
then
just
there's
like,
the water parks in Abu Dhabi, Dubai area.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of the area necessarily.
like
politically, but
we won't be going there anytime soon.
I
But
mean,
like
there is,
Atlantis, Palm Water Park,
there's
Yas Water World.
There is the Wadi.
Yeah, Wild Wadi. I mean,
Wild Wadi has like this like system.
Wild Wadi is
infrastructure of water
iconic.
slides. You can spend an entire hour plus.
yeah,
on, like,
it's a water park
slide.
that's
Like, it's
literally
crazy.
all connected by master blasters. So like you can't be a fan of Schlitterbahn and then tell me to my face that Wild Wadi, which is a water park that is literally connected through a series of master blasters throughout the entire park, that isn't the better park.
Or the water park with the roller coaster in it.
Yeah.
Yas Water World.
Yas
Anyway,
Water World,
not really what I was planning on spending that much time on, but let's go to the next category.
Best family park, Dutch Wonderland. I like Dutch Wonderland.
It's cute, but
it's
I think
cute.
it's a really generic category.
This is exactly
like,
what
Magic
happens.
Kingdom is a family park.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the best, but like it's family
This
park.
is
right?
exactly what happens to parks when they host CoasterCon. Is like the parks. Dutch Wonderland was a host for CoasterCon. I'm sure they were wonderful. I'm sure they were. I really think Dutch Wonderland is cute. Kingdom Coaster will always be Sky Princess to me.
To me, too.
Yada yada yada.
Okay, here's the thing, though. I mean, we're gonna just be repeating ourselves. No matter what the winners are, the problem is the voter base.
Yeah.
Golden Ticket Awards could be a lot better. It could be a lot more. Could be a lot more valid if it wasn't the same voters.
Yeah.
The same acers.
Golden Ticket Awards wouldn't be the laughing stock of Instagram if it wasn't all
just like the same
acers.
American acers. Like
if it wasn't just people who went to CoasterCon and they're like, oh.
Whoever is in charge of the voting committee, which I think we know who it is, but I'm not going to mention their names. They need to go out on Instagram, if they have it on their phone, which I'm not sure, but they need to go out there and they need to go and find these coaster accounts of people that have traveled, which are not hard to find, from all over the world, Asia, Europe, Middle East, and they need to just be like, hey, here's a ballot.
Yeah.
Fill it out. Because there are people with experience.
I feel like if Amusement Today knows exactly what they could do, and they just don't. They won't.
I think it's a problem.
They would rather...
Let's look at the top 10 still, and let's look at the top 10... Top 10 steel and top 10 woodies. Is that what they do, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, tired. Long day.
Yeah. Further, I mean, one of the big takeaways from the top 10, like, so Velocicoaster wins Best Steel Coaster, right?
Which, I mean, it's fair. I think it's
Best New Steel Coaster. But then a lot of people took issue with the fact that Velocicoaster wins Best Steel Coaster. Candemonium won like second place or third place or something, but Candemonium placed like in the top 10 for steel coasters on the top 50 list. The Velocicoaster was way lower. And a lot of people were really confused by like that phenomenon and how that's possible.
Because all the acers went to CoasterCon and Hershey Park?
Well, first of all, yes. The fact that Candemonium plays so well is because acers, like, we go to CoasterCon, we love it, we have a great time, the serotonin's flowing, suddenly everything you do on CoasterCon, you've been drinking, you're having a great time, it's banquets and ERT, and suddenly everything you do at CoasterCon is the best coaster you've ever ridden, it's the best park you've ever been to, blah, 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 and then suddenly everything that's up for a Golden Ticket Award that was also at CoasterCon wins because there's like this hysteria hive mind behind the voting where like, of course we're going to vote for Dutch Wonderland to be best family park because they took such great care of us at CoasterCon. We had such a fabulous time.
Best steel coaster in the park.
Yeah. Candemonium's not even the best steel coaster in that area. It's not even the best steel coaster in that particular corner
exactly.
of Hershey Park. So, but there was...
And I know that's subjective, like we think that way, but I just think in general, like it's problematic that it's scored so high on the list when there are coasters out there in the world that I think everyone would, listening to this episode, would be like, that's probably better than Candemonium. You know what I'm saying?
Another more damning evidence that like the people who are voting for these rides are not the people who should be voting is that Valhalla won Best Water Ride, even though it wasn't open this year. It's all people, and myself included, I'm partially guilty for this. When we did the Ace UK tour and rode Valhalla, everyone on our bus agreed that this was the greatest thing we've ever ridden, and we were going to vote for Valhalla for Best Water Ride, and it's won every single year since the Ace tour.
It's been the same voters ever since.
It's been the same voters every year, and so that ride keeps winning based on its 2015 performance, even though in the years since, the experience has dwindled because of the high maintenance costs. And so there's something that's just flawed about that. There's like, all of the European voters are like, how did Valhalla win this if it was close? And I'm like, well, it's because it's been winning every year since 2015. And like, nobody feels like they've ridden anything better or different or more interesting in the last 7 years, even though there's definitely been more better and interesting water rides built in the last 7 years, like Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai, for example.
Or Walrus Splash.
Yeah.
Or, there's some really cool water rides out there. I mean, there's even the Whitewater West water slide rides that are all over China that are like really impressively cool.
And then there's other things like Six Flags Fiesta Texas won Best New Show, which
First of all, Best New Show is kind of a weird category.
That's a really weird category.
Because, like, what about just Best Show in general, or like Best Nighttime Spectacular or something? It seems like awfully geared directly towards a singular project.
And then they win Best 2020 Halloween Event. And
because they're like the only people that host it.
Because all the good Halloween events got canceled.
Yeah, like no shit. None of the Californian nor Floridian events happened last year.
So like Fiesta Texas is like,
you're gonna have Texas and New Jersey left?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, cool guys, like way to, yeah. congratulating.
Seems a little direct.
It sounds a little indulgent, but whatever.
And yeah, it was specifically for 2020. It wasn't like just best Halloween event.
Yeah.
It was best Halloween event in 2020, which means that like almost no parks that. I mean, the pioneers of the Halloween events.
Yeah.
Are California.
Yeah,
and Florida.
I'm like,
I mean,
wow.
Scary Farm,
I think there was
Horror Nights.
There was just there was a great need and desire among certain people to congratulate Fiesta Texas on existing.
I mean, we love Fiesta Texas. Don't get me wrong, but I find it weird that like a global award show is that heavily focused on a category directly, almost seemingly created
and
for.
Like winning for a live stage show is one thing because Fiesta Texas is a descendant of Opryland. That park has always had live stage show power in its blood. That's the thing. But it won best new show for like a firework laser show, and then it won this Halloween show thing, and the Halloween event thing, and I'm like, that's BS. Like,
and it like it's
and they told on themselves by saying that it was for 2020. When it's like, well, there's a reason why Hollywood Horror Nights wins every other year. It's like, well, Halloween Horror Nights was canceled, so
if anything, I would have loved Scary Farm to have gotten awards sometime. But then, for me, it's kind of like the show category because I find like new show just like kind of weirdly specific.
Yeah, not just best show, but best new show.
And because in my head, I'm like, you know what? I have seen shows where I've literally been so overwhelmed that I've cried. Ocean Resistance and Traveling Ocean Kingdom. I mean, it must be the most fireworks that a single theme park blows in one night with like. It's just so over top spectacular. It's like so stupid crazy. Or in my head, I'm like, how does this even like?
Or even like the nighttime shows.
Like,
even
the Disney shows.
Yeah, the castle show at Shanghai Disney.
Not undermining Fiesta Texas here. Like, again, we love the park, but
it's still Six Flags.
Are we gonna talk like global scale? Are we really gonna say like this is the best show? I don't know. I mean, good for them.
Yeah,
like use it for marketing, guys.
Yeah, get what you can. Like you know, drive up your attendance.
Like make it a billboard, put it in front of the show, do it. But like
buy some billboards, put them in front of SeaWorld.
Like, I'm like, yeah, well, Golden Ticket Awards, like, come on, look in the mirror. Do you really think it's gonna reflect globally? Be like, oh, that's really like, oh, globally.
Yeah, no one in Europe and China is gonna look at Fiesta Texas and be like, oh yeah.
At the end of the day, maybe the Golden Ticket Awards are from Americans for Americans. I mean, Europa Park is like throwing around that they won an award. Good for them. But I mean, it's also like the only international park that won anything. So like, you know, maybe other countries are in like regions where like nobody really cares about GTAs, and maybe that's why it's so American content. You know.
I also feel like I kind of expected something from Japan to win after the Japan tour, but like Disney Sea for some reason never wins. Like it gets close, but it's never.
I don't think the tour had enough people on it.
There was not. Yeah, or just Disney Sea just isn't coaster oriented enough. It's not enough to tip the scale with like a ride like Europa Park. Finally,
a park like Europa Park. Yeah.
The last thing I think from the winners circle that was bewildering to me is Dollywood taking away some new awards for most beautiful park.
It is a beautiful park, but we actually had this conversation among ourselves a lot, and we're like, and this is just like Silver City versus Dollywood, where I was like, well, Dollywood's starting to become a little big. It's starting to become a little open. Like trees are being cut, things are being, midways are becoming wider. It's is it really? I feel like Silver City has that old Dollywood charm. Yeah, but like it still lives it.
Silver City is Dollywood in the '90s,
and I still think there's other parks that are really, really pretty that could compete with that.
Because this is the first year that Busch Gardens Williamsburg didn't win, and I'm a little surprised that it went that direction for Williamsburg because I just don't think that. I just don't think that Dollywood is
that much prettier.
In fact, it's not the prettiest Hershend Park because Silver Dollar City is. And Dollywood has never been less pretty, ever, because they've been knocking down trees left and right. I mean, the train ride, because of the Wildwood Grove expansion, has gone from being like a scenic, natural
just kind of
experience to being like just a survey of all of the park's attractions and expansions. And it's like...
It's cool, but it's not pretty.
I miss the part of the train ride where it was actually natural. And like, for this year's lightning rod fix... they had knocked down all of these trees that they were able to preserve during the original construction of Lightning Rod. And this time they gave up. They went up there.
We love parks of Dollywood, but I'm just kind of surprised.
It's just disappointing. I just feel like Dollywood has never been uglier.
I mean, have any of these voters been Efteling?
It's finally...
Efteling has so much more natural beauty, and I'm like, well, if we're going to play the game, even if it's just like manicured landscape, Efteling would still...
I mean, how many of these people have been to Shanghai Disney Sea, Fantasia
And even if you don't want to give it to Disney, because Disney always always gets everything. I understand that.
That's fair.
But I think there's a really large, fair amount of parks out there that are even perhaps more independent that really deserve it. And again, that's what
Ocean Park,
show.
That's
the one I said. The first thing I said when I came out, I was like, wait, why Dollywood? Ocean Park exists.
Yeah.
Ocean Park is so beautiful. I mean, you build a park in the mountains on the open sea. I mean, it's spectacular.
Yeah, panoramic views of the South China Sea from an island in Hong Kong. It's like, nope, Dollywood.
Anyways, I mean, again, we're not trying to sound like, international.
Maybe we're just cranky. But it's just like, I don't know. I'm just kind of tired. And I just feel like I wasn't even going to.
Well, one of the funny things that I found, isn't there like a category about something that was new for 2020 that won? They gave it, the new for 2020, like Best Dark Ride in 2020, they gave it to Hollywood Studios Rise of Resistance. But Hollywood Studios Rise of Resistance opened in 2019.
Yeah.
So, like, that category.
And they specifically gave it to Disney Worlds, not Anaheim.
So, like, for me, I'm like, so Best New Family Attraction of 2020 or 2021.
Best Dark Ride and Best New Attraction in
all three went to went to Star Wars Rise of Resistance at Disney Hollywood Studios. The biggest problem here is that Hollywood Studios' Rise of Resistance
opened in November of 2019,
or it may have been early December because I went to the Delta Innovator after.
It was like the last.
It was one of those things.
It was like Thanksgiving.
But it was definitely 2019 because it was definitely 2019. So I'm kind of like, what in the world? I mean, yes, the one in Anaheim opened in 2020. But then at least put Anaheim on it.
I don't know.
Like, why is it even an option? Like, I feel like there's not a lot of attention to details in this anymore. And I think the biggest problem, personally, is still that the voter base is so completely like the same people that like the results are just so.
I feel like the voter base is almost like xenophobic.
I remember back in like 2014, I was kind of bothered. I was like, you know what, whatever. And then like I started voting and trying to make a difference and like kind of put global like skill and like suggest other Europeans like vote and stuff. And now I'm just kind of at this phase where I'm just tired of the golden ticket.
I feel like the GTAs, they don't care if the voters have never been out of America, but they'll be damned if they put a voter on the panel that's never been to America.
And I feel like if we had like an equal base of voters around the world, this could be like the award show. This could be like the golden ticket. The golden tickets could be like the Golden Rover theme parks. Like, if there was like a voter base of people that had been all over the world, we would have had a much more balanced results. We would have had parks getting shout outs that would really like. It would not just bring attention to these parks, but it would really be like, you know what, golden tickets, they have something to say.
It would
like,
bring attention to the parks, and it would bring attention to.
But I'm sick and tired of the same old American
reputability.
But I'm sick and tired of the same old American parks winning, but like getting the global title.
Like
it's like
at the end of
it's
the
like
day,
playing baseball and being like the world championship, but like the only country that plays it is like America.
Yeah,
like the only people involved in this like competition are like the American teams.
Yeah, I just feel like at the end of the day, it's Amusement Today's game to lose. If they want to be a major international brand, they should be wanting the reflection of these results to reflect the whole industry to the best of their ability, and they could be doing better, and they're not. They are choosing not.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, the only country that probably really cares about these are the American parks, and it's a great marketing gig. So congratulations to all the parks that won. Like literally, like make some billboards, sell your rights, make an advertisement.
Ride that shit off into the sunset.
Seriously, do it.
Fiesta Texas, we're so excited for all the things you're doing next year.
Congratulations, love it for you. I'm excited for the dive
laugh your ass all the way to the bank.
I can't wait to see that golden ticket placard everywhere.
Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to win Best New Coaster for your B&M dive machine.
But
that's inevitable.
But directly to the Golden Ticket Awards organizers, to Amusement Today, please look into like changing this. I mean, the younger generations of coast enthusiasts, theme park enthusiasts, we're just like shaking our heads.
Everybody under 30 thinks you're a joke. So get it together.
That's very direct. But at the end of the day, I think we made a point pretty clear here. It's like we are privileged to have traveled that we have, and there's other people that we know that have traveled, and we have lots of friends and family all over Europe and Asia that are really into roller coasters, and these people's votes are never heard, they never get the chance, and you know what, there's some damn good shit out there, and it's not getting the recognition that it deserves.
Yeah.
And so Golden Ticket Awards, I challenge you to change that. If you are still willing to send me back next year, I will participate again. But like, come on, like let's really let's make it the global award.
If you want to pride yourself on having a varied voter base, then do it and act like it. Make it happen.
And that's that.
Boom. Mic drop.
And with that, we're going to end the episode. We're already a little bit later on. We'd like to end with a boom. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Cozy Kings Radio. One more episode this season.
Yeah.
It's going to end season 3 soon, and we're back soon with season 4 in November of this year. Go visit thecozykings.com for all these new articles we've got coming out and our crown ratings, all that good stuff. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Bye.